feminism is fake news. I mean, think about it. Who has been doing it better or longer than feminists? It's been about 50 years that they've been pumping fake news into the media. And the media is a very willing partner in putting this stuff out there. Unbelievable. We're going to have a look at a number of the different fake news pieces that they've done over the last 50 years. And then I'm going to have some suggestions about what we can do about it. So first, let's look at a definition of what fake news is. What is fake news? Well, one definition says fake news is deliberate misinformation or hoaxes. Fake news is written and published with the intent to mislead in order to gain financially or politically, often with sensationalist, exaggerated, or patently false headlines that grab attention. Yeah, like all men are rapists and all men are pigs. You know, the fake news started off with that, and I think the feminists were surprised that the media would go along with them. They'd print such hateful sorts of things. All men are rapists. I mean, that's fake news, but it was just a start. And I think it surprised them. I think it said, wow, we can get away with a lot. And the media people, of course, they sold a lot more product based on the fake news that they were putting out for feminists. So, you know, think back. What are some of the fake news pieces that feminists have done over the years? The biggest one probably is the wage gap thing. You know, women earn 67 cents on a dollar that men earn. Big headlines over and over and over again until people are just absolutely convinced that that's the case. Well, guess what, folks? That is fake news. Warren Farrell has completely debunked this with the book Why Men Earn More. And others have debunked it. It's simply not true. You know, the feminists used this median statistic as a means to try and imply that there was some sort of discrimination. But that falls apart completely when you look at what people choose to do and what they choose not to do. So that's big fake news. And it's important to look at this one first because look at what happened. The fake news came out, big published, everyone starts believing, oh, they're right. But then what happens? You know, everyone is completely believing it. Then it's debunked. Then, even when it's debunked, it keeps going. President Obama said also many times, women only earn X cents on the dollar that men earn, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, I call it the myth that keeps on giving. I mean, you can't kill it. So this is fake news that keeps going and going and going. What else? You know, geez, the whole thing about 1 in 5 college girls will be raped or sexually assaulted during her time in college. 1 in 5. As a parent, if I thought my daughter had a 20% chance to be raped or sexually assaulted, I don't think I'd send her to any college that would do that. And when you look at the actual facts around things, when you look at what's actually the research says, it's nowhere near 1 in 5. It's way, way off. I mean, the federal government has been taking statistics on this whole thing about sexual assault in colleges for years. It's not 1 in 5, folks. It's more like, I think it's 1 in 500, something like that. 1 in 300. I don't know exactly what it is. But 1 in 5 is an exaggerated fake news piece that's geared to do what? It's geared to A, make women look like victims, and B, get the politicians to send them more money. That's what's underneath all this stuff, is victimhood and money. And oh, the politicians are more than happy to come up and save the day with more and more money for this fake news. We see it over and over and over again. You know, one guy has estimated that by 2000, by about the year 2000 or a little after, the feminists had accumulated $3 billion in donations, not from the government, but from private sources, including the pharmaceutical companies, George Soros, Rockefeller, and a couple of others. Think about that, $3 billion. And of course, they used that to do what? To put out more and more fake news, and then to generate more sense of victimhood, and then to get more and more money. And what do? They used this money to get bills written that legislate this and that. Then they go into the whole bureaucracy of building it up. You know, we have to have More, we have to re-educate everyone. So they spend all this millions of dollars on educating the policemen, the judges, the everyone. All this feminist re-education, huge amounts of money. It's a bureaucracy. It's literally a bureaucracy. Anyway, let's get to another one. So we got the 1 in 5, and then the domestic violence stuff is just a mind blower. This whole thing about women are the only victims of domestic violence is just about the nuttiest thing one could ever see. But that's fake news. They've been pushing this for decades. You know, have you ever heard the thing about 1.5 million women were victims of domestic violence in the United States? Have you heard that one before? I'll bet you have. I'll bet you have. And it comes from research, and indeed that research did say that there were indeed 1.5 million women who were victims of domestic violence. They put this stat every place. If you go to your Google and you type in 1.5 million women were victims of domestic violence, you'll get hundreds and hundreds of websites that come up claiming that is the case. And in fact, it's true. But here's where the fake news comes in. They only tell one side. Because that very same study, guess what? It showed that 837,000 men were victims of domestic violence within the same frickin' period. Sheesh. But no one says a word about that. This is the same study. But they only look at one half. They don't look at the other half. And they promote that one half to get what? More funding, more funding, more funding. The VAWA is about $1 billion, I think $1.5 billion a year, something like that, of money. What does it do? It builds bureaucracies. There's over 2,000 women's shelters around the country that only help women, and these are funded by our federal government. Of course, that creates a bureaucracy with more and more people who have to support it, more people who work there, etc. It's a huge number of people that are built up from this, and we look around us, we got bureaucracies every place that are basically feminist owned. You know, the other piece of domestic violence fake news that came out that was just unbelievable was the whole thing about, I think it was 22 to 40% of all women who were admitted to the ER were there because of domestic violence. Oh boy, this is so fake news. I mean, anybody with half a brain could go and research that and see that that is just completely false. But that didn't keep the media from printing it, and it didn't keep the feminists from spreading it as far and wide as they could. Fake news, fake news, fake news. I mean, these people are the pros at it. What does it do? It sinks into a good citizen's minds, thinking that, my gosh, these poor women, they're so victimized, and these men that beat them up are so bad. I mean, it's like they've been pushing this narrative for so long that our population is basically brainwashed now with feminist dogma. Dog something else. I mean, jeez, it's just mind-blowing when you think about it, how crazy it is. We can't forget Ellen Pence, who was one of the co-founders of the Duluth Project, and which eventually turned into the Duluth Model. And Ellen had a quote that I think is worth our seeing. Because if you think that the radical feminists really believed that women were only victims of domestic violence, then you got another thing coming. Let's listen to what Ellen has to say. In many ways, we turned a blind eye to many women's use of violence, their drug use and alcoholism, and their often harsh and violent treatment of their own children. So they turned a blind eye to women's violence. That means they put their ideology up above the safety of children, the safety of men, the capacity for families to be loving with each other. They put their ideology above everything, even the safety of kids. I mean, that is crazy. Fake news, boys and girls. Anyway, the healthcare is another one that they pushed fake news with. My goodness gracious. You know, by the 1990s, women had, I think, 6 or 7 major organizations for women's health. You know, women's health this, women in research, health research, women do this, women. It was like just all over the place. These are main, big kind of organizations that were national. Of course, all the time, men don't even have an association for men's health. I mean, it's completely lopsided. But at any rate, the 1990s, they've actually made quite a few gains, and the doctors and the whole system is starting to be more completely aware of women and how they're different and how they're unique and blah, blah, blah. And that's a good thing. But in the 1990s, what happens? The feminists start, oh no, the women are second-class citizens in healthcare. Women are not getting the healthcare they deserve. Women are ignored in research, and on and on and on. Of course, what does the media do? The media prints all this stuff as if it's fact. And of course, it's not fact. Warren Farrell said later something to the effect of, if they are so neglected in healthcare, why do they live 7 years longer? That's a fact. He did the study. He looked at all the research that's been done, and he found that 23 times as many studies had been done on women's issues that had been done on men's. 23 times. So neglected. This is just more very potent fake news that shifts the consciousness of our culture and also pushes our politicians to give more money to women. One of the things you notice in the fake news produced by feminists is they usually have some catchy number, like 1 in 4, 1 in 5. Well, with the healthcare stuff, it was 0. And they pointed towards this Harvard study that studied 2,077 subjects on aspirin and heart attacks, and every one of those subjects was a man. And they made a big deal about there were 0 women involved in this study. How could there be 0 women? What they didn't tell you was there was a companion study going along with this with 4 times as many subjects that studied the same thing that was all female. So again, what we see is they tell only one side of the story, they leave out the other, but it leaves a big impression with fake news. So big was the impression that it left, Congress took one look at all the fake news, and it was $625 million for the Women's Health Initiative. It was $325 million for the Women's Equity in Health in the 1990s, and then they upped the breast cancer funding. They tripled it, I think, something like that. So it's like they're pumping all of this money into women's health, but wait a minute, hold on just a second. Men died more often and earlier from every major cause of death. But the women are crying fake news, we're the problem, but it's really the men who are dying. What can you say? I mean, if you look at the facts, you see one thing. If you look at the fake news, you see quite another. Okay, then there was the whole self-esteem thing, with the education, the women, the girls in schools. The research came out, I think it was the AAUW came out with this research saying, oh my gosh, girls, when they hit high school, their self-esteem drops dramatically. They must be shortchanged in schools. Everyone freaks out. Oh my goodness, girls, and this is all fake news. It's crazy. And everyone gets upset. And so what do? They start changing the schools to fit girls' needs, even though at the time it was boys who were having a hard time at school. They make it more and more and more for girls and women from this fake news because it was baloney. Christina Hoff Sommers tore it apart and broke it down and showed very clearly that what they tried to say was fake news, completely fake news. So we see the fake news all over the place. They've gotten feminists now, I think the estimate I heard was $35 billion over the last 40 years of funding from the government and from private sources. Think about that. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money you can build a lot of organizations and a lot of bureaucracy with. And you can change a lot of minds with fake news. But it's not really very heart-centered, and it's not really very helpful to everyone. It's very biased and bigoted. At any rate, we're left now with a media that is poor. They suck. I mean, they're not following men's issues. They're following women's stuff. They're following this and that, but they're not following the kinds of issues and news that we want to be followed, right? So what the hell can we do about that? Well, I got some ideas about that I'd like to share with you. A lot of people are out there doing good work now on the kinds of things we're talking about today, men's issues. And a lot of them have pages on Patreon. And frankly, instead of spending that $20 to $30 a month on a subscription to a newspaper that's going to give you more and more fake news, why don't you take that 20 or 30 bucks and put it into Patreon? Here are 10 people on Patreon that I like, that I think are worthwhile, that I donate to every daggone month, because I know that we are never going to get $35 billion, but daggone it, we can self-fund a little bit. So let's go through the 10. Okay, first up, Paul Elam and An Ear for Men. Paul was the main character of the Red Pill movie and has been fearlessly voicing the Red Pill truth for many years. Then there's Steve Brule, an independent filmmaker who captured some of the malicious anti-male protests you see in the Red Pill movie. He features numerous videos of Janice, Fiamengo, and others. Great stuff. Then Skeptor, a strong voice speaking out on men's issues, feminism, and many other topics. Lauren Southern, an independent investigator who's done some fine Red Pill work in getting the truth out. Then there's Independent Man, a prolific Australian videographer who focuses on men's issues and truth in politics. And of course the Honey Badgers, very popular persistent seekers of truth, including the infamous Karen Strawn and Alison Tiemann. And Cassie J., the woman who brought us the remarkable and groundbreaking Red Pill movie. Enough said. Black Pigeon Speaks, focusing on issues that are neglected by the mainstream media, including men's issues. And then there's my own site, bringing forward the message that men are indeed good. Notice the red Become a Patron button on the page. To set up an account on any Patreon page, just click that button and follow the prompts. They'll take your info, either credit card or PayPal, and it'll be automatically billed once a month. Simple. If you want to limit the amount you pledge per month, just go to your account in the upper right-hand corner and then select Your Pledges, then click on option Set a Monthly Max and set it to whatever you want. Even as little as $1 a month can make a difference. I like to give a bit to multiple creators like the ones listed here, but you likely have your own way. Go for it. The above are just to get you started. See if your favorite creator is on Patreon. The best way to fight fake news is to bring the truth forward. Your 20 bucks could make a difference. And let's not forget, men are good, as are you. Please do investigate Patreon and support those you find worthy. And like, comment, share, and all that stuff.